I am Seth Nurbass, a patent attorney in New Orleans. The title of this presentation is Identifying and Attracting Louisiana Hummingbirds. I have been fortunate to be a banding assistant to Hummingbird Queen Nancy Newfield since 2019. I took a Master Gardener class in 2019 and a Master Naturalist course in spring of 2020, delayed until fall of 2020 thanks to COVID. This presentation includes hummingbird species in the U.S., hummingbird species in Louisiana, hummingbird plants, hummingbird feeders and food, bird baths, photos and videos of hummingbirds, and bird apps, my YouTube playlist, and other bird resources. Useful birding apps include eBird, Merlin Bird ID, GoBird, Audubon Birds, and the iBird Pro app. Some good resources for those interested in hummingbirds are Nancy Newfield's website, a playlist of my related YouTube videos, Nancy Newfield's free book, Louisiana Hummingbirds, and a playlist of my YouTube bird videos. If you take a photo of this page, you can later use the QR codes to get to all of these different places. There are believed to be 366 species of hummingbirds in the world. They occur only in the Americas. 24 species have been observed in the U.S. and Canada. 15 species are considered residents or regular visitors. 9 species are considered vagrants that are rarely seen in the U.S. and Canada. In Louisiana, 14 species have been observed so far. 9 species are regular visitors to Louisiana. 5 species are vagrants, for which there are fewer than a handful of visits each. Pod is of adult males of the 14 hummingbird species which have been observed in Louisiana. As you look at all of these different birds, you can see that it's fairly easy to tell one from another, even if you can't figure out immediately which is which. You could take a photograph and look up the bird and probably arrive at a pretty good identification. This next slide is of the females of the 14 species which have been observed in Louisiana. And here you can see a lot of these females look like one another. Some are different, but the great majority resemble at least the female of at least one other species. That's when it gets tricky to identify hummingbirds, even with the photograph, if you see a female in the field. This slide shows the 24 hummingbird species which have been observed in the U.S. The hummingbird species in blue text have also been observed in Louisiana. The most common hummingbird in the U.S. and in Louisiana, and probably the world, is the ruby-throated hummingbird with an estimated U.S. population of 36 million birds. The oldest known ruby-throated hummingbird was 9 years and 2 months old when last encountered after having been banded many years before. The rufous hummingbird has an estimated U.S. population of 19 million birds, with the oldest known rufous hummingbird being 8 years and 11 months old. The Anna's hummingbird has an estimated population of 8.2 million birds, with an age of 8 years and 2 months old. The black-chinned hummingbird has an estimated U.S. population of 7.7 million birds, and the oldest known black-chinned hummingbird was 12 years and 1 month old. The broad-tailed hummingbird has an estimated U.S. population of 7.6 million birds, and at 12 years and 2 months, the broad-tailed was the oldest hummingbird found after being banded. The quality hummingbird has an estimated population of 4.5 million birds, and the oldest known calliope hummingbird was 10 years and 1 month old when last encountered. The Allen's hummingbird has an estimated population of 1.7 million birds in the U.S., and the age of the oldest known Allen's hummingbird is 5 years, 11 months. The Costas hummingbird is the first one on this list, which this has not been observed in Louisiana as well. It has a population of 1.6 million birds, and the oldest known Costas hummingbird was 8 years, 9 months old when last encountered. The broad-billed hummingbird has an estimated population of 200,000 birds, and the oldest known broad-billed hummingbird was 9 years, 1 month old. The buff-bellied hummingbird has an estimated population of 100,000 birds in the U.S., and the oldest known buff-bellied hummingbird was 11 years and 2 months old when last encountered. The Rively's hummingbird has an estimated population of less than 5,000 birds in the U.S., and the oldest known Rively's hummingbird was 11 years old. The Lucifer hummingbird has an estimated population in the U.S. of less than 5,000 birds, and the oldest known Lucifer hummingbird was 7 years and 5 months old when last encountered. The blue-throated mountain gem has an estimated U.S. population of less than 2,000 birds, and the oldest known blue-throated mountain gem was 7 years, 11 months old when last encountered. The violet-crowned hummingbird has a population of less than 200 birds in the U.S., and the oldest known violet-crowned hummingbird was 6 years, 1 month old when last encountered. The white-eared hummingbird has an estimated U.S. population of less than 200 birds, and the oldest known white-eared hummingbird was 3 years and 11 months old when last encountered. The Mexican violet ear is a vagrant in the U.S., as are the green-breasted mango, the plain-capped starthroat, the amethyst-throated mountain gem, the Bahama woodstar, the bumblebee hummingbird, the Xanthus hummingbird, Barreline hummingbird, and cinnamon hummingbird. The ages we estimate based on banding data from USGS, and the estimated numbers we got online from Hummingbirds of the U.S., a photo list of all species. The following 3 slides are lists of hummingbird species by state or province in the United States and Canada. The state with the most hummingbirds is Arizona, with 12 different species. A number of states have only one species, the ruby-throated hummingbird, as seen in the bottom of this slide. Louisiana is about in the middle of the pack with 6 hummingbirds which are considered commonly found in Louisiana according to the people who prepared the data from which I prepared these slides. There are 2 Canadian provinces which do not have hummingbirds commonly found, and those are the 2 are the Northwest Territories in Nunavut. But I checked on eBird, and there are records of a few hummingbirds being present in each of those places, but really just isolated records. There are 15 hummingbird species which are considered to be commonly found in the United States by the folks who put together this information. 5 hummingbird species are commonly found in Canada, and 56 hummingbird species are commonly found in Mexico. They're not listed here. And these slides are based on 15 species hummingbirds commonly found in North America by Journey North, which is an organization which tracks migration of hummingbirds, butterflies, and other migratory species. The next 2 slides are Louisiana hummingbird species. The first slide is in date order, and the second slide is in order of population. The In blue text are the hummingbird species which were first observed after Nancy Newfield began banding hummingbirds in Louisiana. And as you can see, Nancy was the first person to band 11 of the 14 hummingbird species shown in this slide. And in fact, for one hummingbird species, the broad-billed hummingbird, which was first recorded in Louisiana in November 1990, she banded the hummingbird in her own yard. In population order, the hummingbirds are listed slightly differently from in date of presentation. As you can see, the calliope hummingbird, even though one of the more recent species in Louisiana, has had over 1,500 eBird observations through July of 2025. And some of the older or the other species which have been around longer, like Allen's, number much less than the calliope. And then there are some species for which we believe there are only one, two, or three actual birds that were observed, even though there might be many, many observations. For example, the blue-throated mountain gem, which was present in Baton Rouge in, I believe it was 2023, 2024, had many, many visitors to the yard where the hummingbird was found, although it was just one of three hummingbirds, one of three blue-throated mountain gems to be found in Louisiana. The ruby-throated hummingbird is the most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There are over 60,000 observations posted to eBird, and over 20,000 have been banded. Hundreds of thousands or millions pass through Louisiana during spring and fall migrations. Though it migrates, it can be observed somewhere in the state every day of the year. There is no evidence that any individual ruby-throated hummingbird ever spends its entire life, or even a full year, entirely within Louisiana. The range maps on the right of this slide are from two different sources. One is from Birds of the World, and the other is from the iBird Pro app. As you can see, they have slightly different information, and in this case, I believe that the iBird Pro app is more accurate in that it shows that we have hummingbirds year-round along the Gulf Coast, including in Louisiana, parts of Louisiana. The rufous hummingbird is the second most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There have been over 8,000 observations posted to eBird, and Nancy Newfield has banded more than 3,400 of them. It was first observed in Louisiana in Baton Rouge in 1934. The adult male looks a lot like an adult male ruby-throated hummingbird, but with rufous wings and back instead of emerald green. Again, the range map from iBird Pro appears to be more accurate than the range map from Birds of the World. The black-chinned hummingbird is the third most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There have been over 4,000 observations posted to eBird, and Nancy Newfield has banded more than 900. It was first observed in Louisiana in Baton Rouge in 1950. The adult male looks a lot like an adult male ruby-throated hummingbird, but with duller green wings and back instead of emerald green, and with a purple gorget instead of a ruby red gorget. Again, the range map from iBird Pro appears to be more accurate than that from Birds of the World. The beak-bellied hummingbird is the fourth most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There have been over 3,000 observations posted to eBird, and Nancy Newfield has banded more than 300 of them. It was first observed in Louisiana in New Orleans in 1965. Although it is widely reported that the only hummingbirds in the U.S. that breed east of the Mississippi River are ruby-throated hummingbirds, there's reliable evidence of buff-bellied hummingbirds breeding on the east bank of the river near St. Gabriel. Calliope hummingbird is the fifth most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There have been over 1,500 observations posted to eBird, and Nancy Newfield has banded more than 200. It was first observed in Louisiana in reserve in 1982. It is the smallest hummingbird outside of Cuba. The tallest bird in North America is the whooping crane, about 5 feet tall with a wingspan of 7 feet. At 11 to 17 pounds, the whooping crane weighs as much as over 2,000 calliope hummingbirds. The broad-tailed hummingbird is the sixth most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There are over 500 observations posted to eBird, and Nancy Newfield has banded more than 80. It was first observed in Baton Rouge in 1952. It appears similar to ruby-throated hummingbirds, but adult males have a rosy red gorget instead of a ruby red gorget. The broad-billed hummingbird is the seventh most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There have been over 285 observations posted to eBird. Nancy Newfield has banded more than 25, including the first one observed in Louisiana. It was first observed in Louisiana in Metairie by Nancy Newfield at Nancy Newfield's house, Casa Colibri, in 1990. It resembles buff-bellied hummingbirds, having a similar red bill, and immature males are difficult to distinguish from buff-bellied hummingbirds. The Allen's hummingbird is the eighth most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There have been over 275 observations posted to eBird. Nancy Newfield has banded more than 100. It was first observed in Louisiana in reserve in 1975. It is closely related to rufous hummingbirds, and adult males are difficult to distinguish from adult male rufous hummingbirds, which can have green on their backs like Allen's hummingbirds. Deanna's hummingbird is the ninth most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There are over 125 observations posted to eBird, and Nancy Newfield has banded more than 20. It was first observed in Louisiana in Johnson's Bayou in 1979. It is believed that some individuals are non-migratory, though many migrate. The blue-throated mountain gem appears to be the 10th most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There are 106 observations posted to eBird. Nancy Newfield has banded just one. It was first observed in Louisiana in Baton Rouge in 1992, and it appears that it was only photographed in 1992 and 2021 through 2022. However, most of the 106 observations appear to be of a female in Baton Rouge in 2021-2022. I believe that only 3 have been observed in Louisiana, including one banded by Nancy Newfield in Slidell in 1994/1995. The green-breasted mango appears to be the 11th most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There are 28 observations posted to eBird. Nancy Newfield has banded just one. It was first observed in Louisiana in Greenwood in 2009. However, most of the 28 observations and 164 photos uploaded to eBird appear to be of an immature female in Acme, then Schriever, in 2023-2024. Nancy Newfield banded it in December 2023. The Mexican violet ear appears to be the 12th most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There are 14 observations posted to eBird. Nancy Newfield has not banded it in Louisiana. It was first observed in Louisiana in Lafayette in 1999. However, it seems that the 14 observations are all of 3 birds, one in 1999, one in 2004, and one in 2016. Rivoli's hummingbird appears to be the 13th most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There are only 3 observations posted to eBird, and Nancy Newfield has not banded it in Louisiana. It was first observed in Louisiana in Slidell in 2004. However, I understand that all three observations in eBird are of the same immature male in 2004. The Lucifer hummingbird appears to be the 14th most common hummingbird observed in Louisiana. There's been a single observation posted to eBird, and Nancy Newfield has not banded it in Louisiana. It was only observed in Louisiana and New Iberia in 2017. The bird photographed was a female. Male hummingbirds are fairly easy to tell apart, adult male hummingbirds that is, as we've seen in other slides. Adult female hummingbirds are very difficult to tell apart in general, and especially difficult to tell apart are adult female ruby-throated hummingbirds and adult female black-chinned hummingbirds. Now in these two photos, we see the adult female ruby-throated hummingbird on top and the adult female black-chinned hummingbird on the bottom. And the colors appear to be very different in these photos, and I think they are. But in the field, the color variation can be fairly significant, so it's really difficult to tell the two apart. One thing you can do to tell them apart is if you see a hummingbird with a really glittering emerald green back, it's most likely going to be a ruby-throated hummingbird. And the front of the tends to be a cleaner grayish white than the black-chinned hummingbird, which is described as having a sort of dingy whitish gray. Again, it's hard to tell the difference if the two birds are not together. Sometimes if you observe enough birds, you might be able to tell the difference. Now, the other thing about the black-chinned hummingbird is that the female has a nape and back, which is more of a dark green or sort of an ormy green rather than an emerald green. But perhaps the easiest way to tell them apart is that for the adult female ruby-throated hummingbird, the bill is just slightly longer than the head. But for the female black-chinned hummingbird, the bill is about 1.5 times the length of the head. So if you see a hummingbird with a really long bill, chances are it's an adult female black-chinned hummingbird. Another thing to notice is that while both bills are slightly decurved, it appears because of the additional length of the female black-chinned hummingbird, the bill is more easily detected. You can see more easily that it is slightly decurved. The best resource for attracting hummingbirds are hummingbird plants, and the best resource for finding out which plants are best for attracting hummingbirds in Louisiana is the Louisiana Hummingbirds book written by Nancy L. Newfield in 2011. A free version of the book, PDF version, can be downloaded at www.casacolibri.net/louisianahummingbirds.asp. Many of these plants can be found at local nurseries at Almost Eden in western Louisiana and at Grow Joy in Indiana at the website shown. On the left, you see coral honeysuckle, and on the right, red shrimp plant. Bird flowers are the best way to attract hummingbirds to your yard. Hummingbird feeders are a close second. I recommend keeping a hummingbird feeder out year-round in New Orleans. You can see a hummingbird in your yard any day of the year. My formerly favorite hummingbird feeder is the Aspects Mini Hum Blossom feeder, as the views of the hummingbird are virtually unobstructed and it is easy to clean and holds little sugar water. It's usually enough for most yards. Perhaps the favorite of hummingbirds is the Perky Pet Glass Hummingbird Feeder. Every hummingbird that visits our yard uses this feeder, and it is the one that we used at the New Orleans Botanical Garden until recently. My new favorite hummingbird feeder is the I-born hummingbird feeder. The one on the left is a hanger version, and the middle and right views are of a suction cup window feeder. The multicolored bee guards are flexible to not damage the beaks and have very narrow openings, which allow very little oxygen in, which allows the sugar water to last much longer. The sugar water in the Perky Pet glass hummingbird feeder lasts longer between cleanings, about 7 to 10 days typically, than in the Hum Blossom feeder, typically about 3 to 4 days. However, the I-born feeders combine the good visibility of the Hum Blossom feeder with the long sugar water life of the Perky Pet feeder. We now use I-born feeders at the New Orleans Botanical Garden, and most of the feeders in my yard now are I-born feeders. Hummingbird food. To make hummingbird food, sugar water, I put 1 cup of white sugar in a screw top wine bottle, fill with unboiled tap water, shake and refrigerate. It can be kept for months in the refrigerator. Never use honey, brown sugar, or red dye, as they all contain substances that are reported to harm hummingbirds. In most yards, it is not necessary to fill the feeder fully. Unless you observe more than 4 hummingbirds daily, 1/4 of the capacity of the feeder is often enough, and will not likely be all consumed before it starts to get sour or moldy and needs to be replaced. Bird baths. Bird baths can help attract birds to your yard, including hummingbirds, even if you do not use feeders. In New Orleans, they are best kept in the shade. I recommend using one with a pump to keep the water moving so mosquitoes do not breed in the bird bath. I have never seen a hummingbird using any of our bird baths, though you can find many videos of hummingbird parties and bird baths on the internet. These videos show other birds in our bird baths: a screech owl above, a hooded warbler on the left, with an orange-crowned warbler on the hummingbird feeder. This is a photograph of an adult male ruby-throated hummingbird nectaring from coral honeysuckle. The ruby-throated hummingbird is the most common hummingbird species in Louisiana and the United States, North America, and probably the world. I believe that it has the largest breeding range as well. Coral honeysuckle is the best plant, in my opinion, for attracting winter resident hummingbirds. It is very cold hardy and blooms in winter. Red shrimp plant likely comes in second, as it is also cold hardy and blooms in winter. It both typically bloom off and on throughout the year. This is an adult male ruby-throated hummingbird nectaring from purple sage. This is a female ruby-throated hummingbird nectaring from native red morning glory. These photos of an adult male ruby-throated hummingbird show that the ruby red color of the gorget feathers is not due to a pigment, but due to the structure of the feathers, which refract light and reflect back the ruby red we see when the light strikes and we see from the correct angle. In the first photo, the refraction doesn't occur. We only see the feathers as black. In the middle photo, the bird is turning his head toward us and the light is striking the left side of the gorget so that we can see the red. And in the third photo, one can see all of the ruby red in the gorget. These photos show light coming through a hummingbird's feathers. And as you can see, the wings on the left appear to be translucent. And this is the tail in the middle photo. And in the photo on the right, you can see some of the ruby red gorget. Fuchsia plants help attract hummingbirds, though it's difficult to grow them in New Orleans. There is a variety called the angel earrings dainty fuchsia, which can survive the heat and humidity of New Orleans, and it can be found online at Growjoy nurseries. This is a female hummingbird nectaring from the red rocket plant, Russellia sarmentosa. Although it's a very small flower, it's very popular with hummingbirds. And often um, that's the first flower that hummingbirds will visit when they enter our yard. These three photos show the differences between an adult male ruby-throated hummingbird, an immature male ruby-throated hummingbird, and a female ruby-throated hummingbird. On the left, you can see the red gorget of the adult male. On the right, the female has a white gorget, or no gorget, just white feathers on the neck. And in the middle, you see the immature male has the beginnings of a red gorget, although from this angle, you only see the feathers as black. You'll also notice that the tip and the tail feathers of the female and the immature male are somewhat rounded, and the tips are white. Whereas if you look over at the tips of the feathers, tail feathers of the adult male, you can see they're pointed and black. This is a photo of an immature male black-chinned hummingbird. It's the first western species observed in our yard, and this is one of the first photos that I took of the hummingbird when I first spotted it in our yard. It's nectaring from red firespike, and you can see red Turk's cap near the center of the photo, the flower that's pointing upward. And here you can see the same immature male black-chinned hummingbird nectaring from pineapple sage. And then you can see as well, if you look up close, that it has purple gorget feathers. These would be red in an immature male ruby-throated hummingbird. Otherwise, it's difficult to tell the two birds apart. And here's the same immature male black-chinned hummingbird nectaring from pineapple sage. Here you can see this same bird nectaring from starfire pink kufia, and it's doing something called tail wagging. As you can see, the tail is straight in the first two photos, and then it bends forward in the third photo, and then moves back in the next three photos so that it's straight again. In general, if you can't tell whether a bird is a ruby-throated hummingbird or a black-chinned hummingbird, if the bird is tail wagging, it's most likely going to be a black-chinned hummingbird. Here's an immature male rufous hummingbird nectaring from starfire pink kufia. And in the bottom left, you'll see Cape honeysuckle, which is a good orange flower that blooms in the winter. This is a buff-bellied hummingbird that was a resident in our yard in the winter of 2020 through 2021. It first appeared, I believe, on November 20th, 2020, and stayed with us through late March of 2021. We saw it virtually every day, and it perched where we could see it easily. We since had other buff bellies visit our yard. One was caught on our video cameras in 2022 for a few minutes, and another was detected by Merlin Sound ID in 2024. This is a calliope hummingbird, which also appeared in 2020 in our yard and stayed through March of 2021. It was a bit more nomadic than the buff-bellied hummingbird. We saw the buff-bellied hummingbird daily and just about all day, every day, whereas this little calliope hummingbird would pop in, we'd see it for a day or so, and then it would disappear for a few days. This is a female ruby-throated hummingbird nectaring from a suction cup feeder. These little feeders are helpful because they attach to a window so you can get pretty close to the hummingbird on the inside. But also they have a very small opening, which means that it's difficult for air to get in and cause the sugar water to go bad. On the left, you'll see the hum blossom feeder, which I like because when the hummingbird lands on it, you can see it well. But for some reason, it doesn't seem to be a favorite of the hummingbirds, though I have seen many of them use it. It seems as though if there's another feeder around, they typically use the other feeder. This slide shows the same bird we just saw, but this time the video is in slow motion, so you can more easily see the shape of the wing as the hummingbird approaches the feeder and tries to stay in place as it feeds. And the shape of the wings, um, as you can see, varies a lot depending on where the bird is and what it appears to be trying to do. Here is another video of a hummingbird photographed in slow motion, showing how the wings move. And as you can see, the wings are not moving symmetrically most of the time, and that's because I believe they only move symmetrically when the bird is going forward or going backward, but not when it's trying to stay in place or slightly maneuver. So you can see how the wings change shape and direction as the bird moves around. Presentation would not have been possible without the information and experiences shared with the presenter by Nancy L. Newfield. Nancy L. Newfield is a federally licensed hummingbird bander who has been banding hummingbirds since 1979, now longer than anyone else alive today, anywhere in the world. She holds the 12th federal license to band hummingbirds in the U.S. She started a 5-year study of winter resident hummingbirds in 1979 and is now in her 46th year of the study. Known to many as the Hummingbird Queen, she knows more about Louisiana hummingbirds than anyone else. Nancy was born in New Orleans and has spent decades increasing our understanding of hummingbirds. She has written numerous books and journal articles about hummingbirds, and her book, Louisiana Hummingbirds, is available as a free download at this website and a backup website. You can scan either QR code below to access Louisiana hummingbirds. Bird banding provides valuable information. Nancy Newfield has banded over 21,000 hummingbirds and has recaught hummingbirds she banded over 2,100 times. Hummingbirds she banded have been caught at other sites, sometimes as far away as Canada for a hummingbird banded in Thibodaux over 75 times, and she has caught hummingbirds banding elsewhere over 50 times. She has a website, casacolibri.net, which she maintains to help educate the public about hummingbirds. Through the efforts of Nancy Newfield and other bird scientists, we now know that while ruby-throated hummingbirds fly across the Gulf of Mexico on their northward migration, they typically travel along the western Gulf Coast on their southward migration. Also, many hummingbirds migrating south head west north of Lake Pontchartrain rather than crossing it, which helps to explain why our friends in Covington and Mandeville have countless hummingbirds at their feeders in the fall, while we in New Orleans consider 5 at peak migration to be a good number. I have helped Nancy Newfield band hummingbirds in the fall in Tchefuncte Estates, and we've had more than 100 ruby-throated hummingbirds at one time in the yard where we were banding. Jardine. The videos in the slide were captured by Julie Jardine in her yard in Mandeville, where she spends the daylight hours around August to September filling over a dozen hummingbird feeders. She is usually up at 5:30 a.m. and is still filling feeders after dark once they've quit for the night. Sometimes that's easier as the break of daylight around 6:40 a.m. is equally as frenzied as the buzz at dusk at night. At peak migration, she goes through 18 to 20 cups of nectar a day. These are several videos of hummingbirds, ruby-throated hummingbirds in my yard taken with our motion activated cameras. The adult males are shown on the left and directly underneath the text, and to the left there are two females and or immature males that are fighting. This is a larger version of the video shown on the right in the previous slide. You can see the adult male ruby-throated hummingbird moving around, and as he moves around, you can see the color in his gorget change from red when the view is right to black when he's closest to us on the right. This video is of a hummingbird outside our window sitting on a telephone line. It was photographed early one morning using a camera that was on a tripod in the room next to where the hummingbird was. And it's the YouTube video of mine of birds that is most viewed. And I believe it's because it's a relatively short video, it's only 45 seconds long. And it shows the hummingbird spreading out its wings so you can see its various feathers really easily. This is the first rufous hummingbird that appeared in our yard, and we had one hummingbird other than a ruby-throated hummingbird that appeared earlier that same winter, but it was only in our yard for a few days. It was a black-chinned hummingbird. This little fellow stayed with us from early December all the way through mid-March, and he was good about perching where we could easily see him and photograph him. Various resources for identifying and attracting hummingbirds are shown on this slide, including a number of bird apps which are helpful, and the free PDF version of a book, Louisiana Hummingbirds, written by Nancy Newfield in 2011, which is still very helpful today. And here are some QR codes that will help you get to Nancy's website to find a playlist of my related YouTube videos and to get to Nancy's book, Louisiana Hummingbirds, and a playlist of my YouTube bird videos. The 5 apps in this slide are ones that I use almost daily to help identify different birds and to record the birds that I've seen. eBird is a resource that's used by millions of birders throughout the world to record the birds that they've seen. Maryland Bird ID is a very helpful app that we'll discuss shortly. GoBird is a great app which harvests data from eBird sightings and has a filter which will allow you to see which birds have been reported anywhere from 1 to 30 days in the past and anywhere between 1 and 31 miles from where you are at the time. The Audubon Bird app is another good free app for helping to identify birds. The iBird Pro app is a good app. It's available currently for iPhone, but apparently not for Android. These next few slides have information about the Merlin Bird ID app. The Sound ID app I use on a daily basis to help identify birds that I hear, but I can't quite figure out what they are. Or I may see them, and then the Sound ID will tell me that there's a similar bird in the neighborhood, and I'll usually figure out that's the bird that I must have seen. So when you press the Merlin Bird ID icon on the left, you'll see the next screen pop up on your phone, which gives you the option to choose a step-by-step ID of a bird, sound ID in the center, or photo ID on the right. So if we press the sound ID icon, we get the third image in this slide, and Merlin Sound ID tells us that it's listening for birds. And then after some period of time, after the Sound ID has been listening to birds, you'll see a screen like this with a lot of birds listed. As Merlin Sound ID hears a bird, it adds it to the slide or to the image that you see on the right. And while the bird is making noise, usually that bird will be highlighted. This is the Merlin Bird ID app photo ID portion. And this one, again, you press the Merlin Bird ID app, you get the icon or you get the screen that you see next. And then when you click on photo ID, you have the option to either take a photo or choose a photo. And I usually choose a photo because it's a lot easier to take a photo of the bird and then go back and upload that photo to Merlin Photo ID. If you try to take the photo while you're trying to identify the bird, often the bird will disappear before you get a decent photo. Then, once we choose a photo, it looks like what you see on the left. And then you have to manipulate the photo with your fingers to try to get the bird to fill up the little square. You see that in the second image. And then you click next. And then you confirm the location and date. And this is a bird that we photographed in Cullowhee, North Carolina this summer on August 15th. And then when we click on identify, we get the screen all the way to the right, and Merlin Photo ID correctly identified that bird as a ruby-throated hummingbird. Now you can see the photo was pretty bad, not real clear at all, but Merlin ID, the photo ID portion, does a really good job of taking really bad photos and typically coming up with very good identifications. All photos, left range maps, and weekly bar charts on summary pages for each species are courtesy of Cornell Lab. Photos and range maps from Birds of the World and bar charts from eBird. The right range maps are from the iBird Pro app. The text on those pages are of the presenter. The videos on the Jardin slide were provided by Julie Jordan. All other photos and videos were taken by the presenter unless otherwise noted. Thank you to Lydia Ossenberger for asking me to make this presentation, as every time I am asked to present on a topic, I learn more about it. A special thanks to my wife, Mary Beth, who often regrets ceding control over the yard to me in exchange for having control over the inside of our house. Various sources that were used in preparing this presentation can be seen in this slide. We've spoken about Louisiana Hummingbirds, the 2011 book from Nancy Newfield, available as a free PDF version at www.casacolibri.net/louisianahummingbirds.asp. Banding records of Nancy Lang Newfield from 1979 through 2025. Nancy has trained several banders. She trained herself. She was the 12th person to get a federal hummingbird banding license. Cornell Lab, including eBird and Birds of the World. iBird Pro app. Hummingbirds of the United States, a photo list of all species. And for photo credits, to find the original photos and credits for the eBird photos used in the species pages, go to ebird.org/explore, put the species name in the Explore Species search box, press Enter, then scroll down to the Birds of the World photo near the bottom, click on the Explore Species box, and the photos used herein should appear. Click on each photo to get the photographer and an eBird checklist link with more information about the encounter. Thank you for watching.